Neuroscience research shows if your mother is not physically and emotionally present with you until the age of 3, a chunk of your brain literally does not develop. Most of us were fortunate enough to have a mother present physically, but why does no one talk about emotional presence? In this video, I want to discuss who even is a motherless child with a mother, how that fucks the brain, and its 8 symptoms I discovered after working on my own emotional traumas for the last 6 years. If you're new here, I'm a trauma coach and I make videos for people who feel disconnected from their emotions so that I can help them rebuild that connection with the body and re-experience the joy of feeling again. Let's start with the importance of an emotionally present mother, and I bet you'll be surprised by how deeply it affects you. Recently, I went to my native place, Nashik, here in India, and my little baby 18-month-old cousin was there with me. She wasn't doing well and hence was very cranky. Like the smallest of things made her cry. When she started crying, I could be there with her. I could distract her with toys for a while. But after some time, she would start crying again and wouldn't stop until her mother picked her up and held her close to chest. But why was she acting this way? Why was nothing I could do or anyone else could do comforting her? Why would she not let me be her friend? Think about this for a moment. For 9 months of your coming into existence, you were physically part of your mother's body, that is in her womb. And even after birth, child development researchers have discovered that a baby does not know it exists as a separate entity until around the age of 18 months. You'll notice this if you've ever lived with a baby. Around 18 months is when they start recognizing themselves in the mirror. And around 2 years is when they start using the pronouns I, me. Isn't that fascinating? It is around the age of 1.5 years old that a child experiences existence as separate from her mother and environment. Until then, she is one and the same with her mother. If the mother is stressed, her baby will be stressed too. If the mother is happy and present, the baby will feel happy, and so on. It is through this connection that the baby feels safe and content, which becomes the fertile ground for her brain, her nervous system and emotions to fully develop. But what would happen if my cousin was upset, crying, and her mother wasn't emotionally present for her? And this continued for years. In such a case, her brain would get flooded with unhealthy amounts of stress hormone, cortisol, and this would hinder the development of her right brain. We'll look at what that means and how that shows up when you are grown up in a minute. But before that, let's look at who even is an emotionally unavailable mother. It really pisses me off how a lot of what is considered normal treatment or upbringing is actually emotional neglect, especially here in the East. And I was really clueless about any of this when I started on my healing journey. So to help increase the awareness about this, I've made a free research-based quiz that helps you discover how many of your emotional needs were not met as a child. I'll put it in the description below. Do check it out. So I recently started reading this book, Running on Empty, and it beautifully talks about this invisible trauma of neglect. It has this comprehensive list of types of parents that are neglectful, and I'm going to use that as the reference to talk about the 8 categories of emotionally unavailable mothers. Chances are you'll find your mother falls in multiple of these categories. I'll start with the most obvious one and end with the subtler ones no one really talks about. The first one is narcissistic mother, someone who is too concerned about her own self and has no empathy, no understanding of her child's emotions. An example that breaks my heart every time I think about it is a client once told me that she attempted suicide in her teenage years, and when her mother discovered that, her first response was, "How could you do this to me?" The second is authoritarian mother, who tells you, "This is what the rules are, this is what you must do, no questions asked." This happens a lot in conservative religious families like my own, where there are certain rituals that you must follow without questioning them. It gives you the sense that these rituals and these rules are more important than you and your feelings. The next is grieving mother. This one is simple. A mother who has lost someone who is very close to her It could be a divorce or parent's death, and she stays in that grief period for a extended time. In this case, the child has to help her deal with those emotions as opposed to it being the other way around. The fourth is addict mother. This includes not just the obvious addictions like drugs and alcohol, but also other compulsive behaviors like shopping, internet, television, cigarettes, and even work. The actions of an addicted mother is extremely unpredictable, causing not only neglect but also a lot of anxiety for the child. Like he does not know whether he'll be loved or ignored, acknowledged or beat up because of the addiction. The next is depressed or numb mother. She just doesn't has the energy or will for dealing with your emotions. So for example, let's say you were crying or throwing an anger tantrum as a child. Her response would be to just let you be on your own until you calm down, as opposed to comforting you, which would take energy that she probably doesn't has. Sixth is perfectionist mother, who is too focused on your results as opposed to your feelings and well-being. The classic example of this is you coming home with a 95 out of 100 on your test, and instead of a kudos and congratulations, you get asked, where did the 5 marks go? The next is child as a parent. This is where you had to comfort the emotions of your mother or help her through difficulties. Like if there's a fight between your parents, you had to comfort your mother, or maybe you had a lot of siblings and you had to take care of yourself and parent the younger ones because your mother was overwhelmed. And the final category is well-meaning but neglected themselves. I'm using this final one as an umbrella category. To explain this one, let me share a quote from the same book, Running on Empty. To love your child is very different from being in tune with her. Majority, I'd say 90% of neglect comes from parents in this category. Mothers in this category really love their children, but don't really understand what they are feeling and how to support them through those feelings, which again contributes to neglect. I'll give you an example. I had visited my cousin nephew a while back over, and when I was leaving, he was crying because he was upset. So his father told him in the most loving tone possible that, "Beta, don't cry, Fussy will be back again, let him go." Now I know my cousin isn't a mother, but it summarizes what I want to convey. In this instant, he was very loving, but he didn't know how to deal with my nephew's sorrow in a healthy way. So the subconscious message my nephew got was crying is not good, and this message, if repeated enough, will certainly impact his healthy emotional development. In psychologist Rick Hanson's words, what matters is what a child experiences versus the objective reality. So it matters less whether or not your mother actually loved you, and more how you felt growing up. Which brings me to 9 of the most common symptoms in maternally neglected children who grow up. The first is constant feelings of lack of safety. Because the first place of safety for you as a child is your mother. In absence of a physically, emotionally present mother, you feel really unsafe at your core. When you grow up, no person or scenario is considered as safe because in here you feel unsafe, which further leads to a lack of trust in people because you learned that no one is safe. If you open up to them, chances are they'll hurt you or abandon you. This in turn causes a sense of loneliness and isolation. Like you feel the safest when you are on your own and unbothered by anyone else. And I personally relate to this so deeply. I just like to be myself, stick to my routine, because people trigger me left and right. You become fiercely independent because when you needed or asked for help, no one was there for you. So your brain learned, do everything on your own, even though you might desperately need help. This meme pretty much summarizes it. It also shows up as low self-esteem. Think about it. The first place you ever felt worthy and capable of receiving love is through your parents, even more so your mother. And when that doesn't happen, your baby brain isn't mature enough to think, okay, mother wasn't capable of meeting my needs because her own needs were not met when she was my age. Rather, it presumes that she doesn't love you because you are innately unlovable. The sixth sign is you have difficulty opening up in intimate relationships. Because A, people are unsafe, and B, if you open up, they'll see how truly rotten you really are at your core. Even if your partner tells you 1,000 times that they love you, they love you, they love you. Remember we talked of the right brain? One of its functions is to help you regulate your own emotions. In the lack of sufficient development in that area, you become more dysregulated, stressed, and even explosive. Like the smallest of things trigger anxiety, overwhelm, or even rage. In extreme cases, this can look like shutdown or emotional numbness, which is what I experienced. When your emotional needs are not met repeatedly, your brain goes, okay, emotions not needed, and shuts them down. Literally. Finally, you don't understand who you are. When a mother mirrors your emotions and helps you manage them when you are young, that is when you start to develop a healthy identity. Like, okay, that makes me feel this way. This makes me feel that way. And in the absence of this internal compass, you often never understand yourself because your emotions are too confusing or overwhelming for you to handle on your own. To sum it all up, an emotionally unavailable mother leaves you with an exceptionally low EQ, emotional intelligence, which if you don't work to build up again, can be truly devastating. The good news is, unlike IQ, EQ changes drastically over a person's life. If you want to do that, click here to watch this video next, where I share my exact system to address this from its very cause that I've developed after half a decade of healing and research.